Today, Times Square, New York is an elegant metropolis that captivates both locals and visitors. There we can explore the most famous streets, visit the most expensive stores, enjoy Broadway shows, live a real dream. However, in the early 1970s, Times Square was a decadent den, rife with vices and dangers. Small-time criminals, sex workers, and other individuals lived with dirt and rats. The neighborhood was known as the Dodge, well represented by Martin Scorsese's Taxi Driver. June 12, 1972, seemed to be just another day in that suburban hell, but it was not. The World Theater, one of many cinemas specializing in hardcore movies, announced on its marquee an intriguing film, Deep Throat. Known in Spanish as Garganta Profunda, such productions were destined for secret movie theaters and peep shows. The previous year, Sexual Freedom had premiered in Denmark, but it was a European production. Deep Throat was American. A groundbreaking and risky proposal, set to revolutionize society in an unprecedented way. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. To better understand the details of this story and its impact, we need to start from the beginning. June 12 of 1972, the day Deep Throat premiered. Delving into Deep Throat involves getting to know its star and muse thoroughly. Linda Lovelace was born as Linda Susan Borman on January 10 of 1949 in the Bronx, New York. Her father, John Borman, was a cop, but it was her mother, Dorothy Tragney, a strong-willed woman with deep Christian values who ruled the household. Linda grew up in a repressed environment, where the smallest slip could mean physical punishment. She developed a shy and passive personality, making her a target for mockery at school. Her mother's presence was so terrible that as a teenager, she could not maintain a relationship with any boy. When Linda was 16, the Boremans moved to Davie, California. In addition to finishing her studies there, she met a man. With him, she lost her virginity at 19 years old, but also became pregnant. When the time came to give birth, her mother made her sign some papers so that, supposedly, the baby would be cared for by others, for a while, until the girl could function as a mother. The documents actually authorized putting him up for adoption. Linda was never able to meet her son. Exhausted from the control Dorothy exerted from the father's inability to stop her, Linda moved to New York. She wanted to open a boutique while studying for a degree. But in 1970, a car accident caused her serious injuries and she had to return to Florida to recover at her parents' house. She had to put up with her mother again. Linda's life transformed one afternoon while chatting with a friend by the pool. A masculine but charming man approached them, who ended up seducing her. His name was Chuck Trainor. From then on, they started a relationship, even with Dorothy's approval. This allowed Linda to move in with him and get away from her house. Linda and Trainor got married. The future was hopeful, and she could finally enjoy the freedom she had hardly been able to enjoy. But unknowingly, she plunged into an even worse ordeal. Trainor owned the Las Vegas Inn, a strip club, and he never stopped working as a pimp. He quickly wanted to exploit his own wife, Linda. As she was a peaceful person, he took unusual measures to do so. He had her undergo hypnosis sessions. She quit smoking and overcame her shyness, becoming uninhibited and even wild. Trainor confirmed it in their intimate moments. Now she didn't avoid any lovemaking position. Faced with his mental and physical openness, he decided that she would explore new territories. Linda got used to the parties, where she accepted other men's indecent proposals. She became an escort, like others working for Trainor. The young woman wasn't so striking or slender, not the typical poster girl. Her main weapon of seduction was simplicity, the feeling that she could be a neighbor with unspeakable secrets. But Trainor's ambitions knew no bounds, and he thought she should be sexier. Since breast implants were not yet common, she had silicone injected into her breasts. The controversial and risky procedure succeeded in making her look more attractive. Far from being satisfied with their libertine lifestyle, Trainor and Linda moved to Times Square. He had heard that there was an unknown underworld there, that of amateur movies made for adults. Always under her husband's supervision, she began to appear in some silent black and white shorts filmed with Super 8 cameras. At first she was as peaceful and calm as always, but when it came time to film, she lost her shyness. In no time, Linda managed to stand out in this underground film environment and caught the attention of several filmmakers, including Gerard Damiano. Like Linda Gerard Rocco, Damiano was born in the Bronx, but his life was different. In his youth, he served in the United States Navy and later worked as an X-ray technician at Queens Jamaica Hospital. Damiano also opened a hair salon in New York with his first wife. He showed he was perfect for the job with his scissor skills and pleasant treatment of clients. He gained their trust to the point where they shared their frustrations, desires, and even intimate relationship details with him. He noted that there was a breeding ground for many stories there and understood that the women of the time were more liberal than previous generations. Simultaneously, Damiano pursued his other passion, cinema. Through his accountant, he met an independent horror film director and began to work as his assistant. This allowed him to participate in several shoots and learn about making movies with minimal resources. By the late 60s, he began directing 0.629 inches short films. His interest in adult films came naturally. He was inspired by his clients' increasingly spicy anecdotes. Meanwhile, American society was going through a period of sexual liberation. Contraceptive pills encouraged fleeting relationships, and women felt more empowered. For that community of filmmakers, making adult cinema was not just fun. It wasn't about making money, as there was no strong industry. At best, it reached the peep shows. Making these productions devoid of clothing and taboos was an act of rebellion, a way to challenge an increasingly conservative system. Recording this type of content could result in imprisonment at a minimum. It was similar to punk but included sexual acts. Within the underground erotic production circuit, Damiano met Linda. He saw her and wasn't impressed. She was thin, wore a military jacket and a wool cap. Trainor changed his mind when she asked him to watch her demonstrate her greatest skill, fellatio. Even in the most liberal ghettos, this custom was viewed as odd and even disgusting. It was rarely depicted on screen. Damiano found out that Linda not only knew how to perform fellatio, she had a gift for achieving unheard of feats in that area. His immense astonishment inspired him to create a more ambitious feature film rather than just a short story. He noticed that the conditions were right to take that step. In Hollywood, the Hays Code had fallen, the self-censorship mechanism that had prevailed since the 30s. As a result, films were no longer afraid to depict violence, sex, and other bold details. Nudity was becoming commonplace, and the audience responded enthusiastically. A special case was that of director Ras Meyer. He made a name for himself with films featuring scantily clad, attitude-filled women, but the sexual acts were simulated. Determined to go further than anyone in the United States and the world, Damiano wrote over a weekend a script starring Linda Lovelace, a woman who can't reach orgasm. So she goes to Dr. Young, a sexologist who makes a unique discovery. She has her clitoris in her throat. From that moment on, the woman learns to enjoy every intimate encounter with a man. The title of the project was Deep Throat, a term that was novel at the time. The premise seemed a bit strange to Damiano, but he had faith because he felt there was something there, or at least that they had a potential star in the film. Damiano was aware that he couldn't shoot Deep Throat with a hefty budget, but he knew he would need some financing. Did he have aspirations for the project? There wouldn't just be naked people copulating, but every fiery element would be at the service of a well-told story. He found the help in Luis Perayno, director of the independent company Rhinestone Distributors. He liked the script and wanted to invest in the film's production. But he was not convinced that Linda was the star figure. He saw her and she did not generate desire or anything else. He preferred a blonde with a hegemonic and stunning beauty. Damiano insisted, claiming she could attract more clients as an approachable common girl, particularly emphasizing her oral skills. From there, Perayno never doubted her again. With a financier involved, the movie became a serious endeavor. However, Perayno didn't have the $20,000 he needed to start production, so he turned to his father, Anthony Perayno. At that time, he was part of the Colombo family, one of the most powerful organized crime clans in New York. He agreed to give his son the money he needed, but in exchange asked to be credited as a producer. He wouldn't be the only Colombo member to participate. John Sonny Francesi immediately joined, who had earned a fearsome reputation on the streets of New York. The mafia's role in the adult industry was not noteworthy. They controlled the sex market in Times Square, which left them with generous profits. From there, they moved on to become producers of short and long high-voltage erotic films. Damiano was aware of the Perayno's nature, but it was his chance to make the long-awaited feature film. And it was during those days that several of the film's principals polished their names a bit when it came time to sign it. Gerard would be Jerry Damiano, Luis Perayno became Lou Perry. As for Linda, the director suggested she adopt the surname of her character. She was now known as Linda Lovelace, also in real life. The filming of Deep Throat took place in early 1972 in Florida. This distinguished it from typical softcore productions filmed in New York rooms and basements. Damiano brought his family, who had a healthy and warm relationship with the small tech team. In the context of unexpected events, one was unforeseen. The actor set to play Dr. John resigned before shooting his scenes. The movie was left without its main male figure. Damiano had a replacement in his own technical team, saving him time from searching for one. Harry Reams had been hired as a lighting assistant, but he had the ability to get excited even by the noise of the camera. The director had no other options, so he gave him the role. Immediately, Reams proved he was up to the challenge. Damiano and his crew were often supervised by Anthony Perrino and Francesi during filming. He said he wanted to monitor if his money was being well invested. But the most delicate aspects of the filming went through Linda. Trainor's constant presence made her nervous, as the relationship between them had worsened. When alone in the house, he would psychologically and physically abuse her regardless of the reason. Linda frequently arrived on set with bruises that were covered with makeup, but it wasn't always sufficient. Some are visible in certain shots, and there was another detail. Linda earned $1,250 for her work on the film, but her partner and executioner took the money. She did nothing to defend herself. She felt that she loved him too much to report him. Linda was also not safe on the set. Trainor used to show up and even carried a weapon to threaten her if she didn't do things right. She behaved like a professional, but sometimes she couldn't help feeling tense. Before shooting the most heated scenes, Damiano would ask Trainor to go buy more film rolls or other items so he could leave for a few hours. Only then was Linda able to perform with ease. After 6 weeks, and despite the problems, the shooting of Deep Throat was able to be completed. After going through an intense post-production work, it was ready for its premiere. And that's how our story returns to the beginning. On the night of June 12, 1972, the World Theatre hosted the premiere of Deep Throat. Among its makers were Damiano Los Perrino and, of course, Linda Lucia. A white dress that made her look ethereal, she posed for the photographers and greeted the crowd that had come close. That reception alone marked a before and after. No adult film had ever had that media coverage. Once the show started, the curious ones got a surprise. The film contained hot scenes, as promised, but Linda's qualities elevated it to another level. No one needed to understand to realize that it was a different proposition, fresher and bolder than any adult film released to date. The film was a well-crafted comedy with a strong script and entertaining visual gags. Just mention the montage used to capture Linda's orgasm with images of space rockets. That screening was followed by many more. Word of mouth spread like wildfire, and the audience packed the screenings relentlessly. Now, not only did the usual viewers of those kinds of films attend, it attracted the general public. Everyone realized that Deep Throat was much more than nudity and copulation. It represented a fresco of the time when people were still trying to deeply understand the sexual revolution. It ignited a national dialogue, enabling discussion of previously neglected topics like the female orgasm. The film soon could be shown in other theaters beyond the softcore ghetto, reaching conventional theaters across the United States. Deep Throat was making history, but it would have to face some obstacles. Just a few days after its premiere, Deep Throat was monopolizing conversations in American society. It provoked joy and excitement, but also the exacerbated hatred of the most conservative sectors that were generally in positions of power. The mayor of New York, John Lindsay, was enforcing a cleanup policy. He intended to end it with the worst aspects of Times Square, especially with the adult content. Damiano's film became his favorite target. He ordered the police to shut down the War Theatre and seize the copy. The crusade against the end extended across the rest of the country. It was banned in 23 states. The commercial run of Deep Throat seemed to have come to an abrupt end, but it didn't. The controversy gave it unexpected publicity and generated more interest in seeing it. Those who until then knew nothing about the movie rushed to the cinema before it was removed. Boyfriends, marriages, office workers, housewives, and the elderly all shared the experience. The critics also fell head over heels and expressed it in complimentary comments. The event grew, captivating people from all social classes and celebrities alike. Jack Nicholson, Warren Beatty, and writer Truman Capote declared their fanaticism for Linda Lovelace's exploits. The box office numbers turned out to be staggering. It ended up costing just over $25,000, and in the first 7 weeks it grossed $1 million. But later it was estimated to have grossed over $600 million, a figure that could never be verified. Still, it had become one of the most profitable films in history. The box office earnings also have their dark side. The Pereinos discovered that many wings showed pirated copies of Deep Throat. Instead of seizing the material and destroying it, they made arrangements with the cinema owners for them to pay a percentage. Any refusal or betrayal could mean terrible actions from the mafia. Despite its unpleasant aspects, nothing stopped the craze for the feature film. The definitive proof of its impact on pop culture became evident in 1974. Journalists Bob Goodwill and Carl Bernstein uncovered the corruption of President Richard Nixon's government. The case would come to be known as Watergate, and the journalists acknowledged a key figure, an informant with a very particular voice. They nicknamed him Deep Throat, Deep Throat. The movie had made a deep impression. It inaugurated the golden age of adult cinema and helped to open the minds of people ready for new sensations. But behind the phenomenon were still the creators and their conflicts. Deep Throat forever changed the life of those who made it, for better or worse. Damiano could never make much money from the movie. The Pereinos ousted him from their circle and he never fought for the percentage he was owed. He was just glad they didn't kill him. The success of his debut film allowed him to make other highly praised adult films like The Devil and Miss Jones. His work was key to the consolidation of an industry that became massive and lucrative. Even before his death was considered an essential figure of the genre, Reems wasn't as lucky. In June of 1974, he was arrested by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and a year later he was accused of distributing obscene content across the states. To worsen the situation, he was prosecuted and convicted in 1976. His case shocked Hollywood. Numerous stars organized a campaign to pay for his appeal costs. His case was reviewed by the Supreme Court, leading to his release. However, he was unable to recover as an adult film star. He indulged in excesses with no hope for change, but he rehabilitated and began a new life as a real estate agent. He died in 2013 from pancreatic cancer, but no one was as affected by the movie as Linda. He had his 15 minutes of fame as an emblem of adult cinema and symbol of the sexual revolution. She was a Playboy model and was invited to the most exclusive parties. But the good run didn't last. She was in other films that were not successful. The pressures from Trainor and Hollywood led her to vices, and she had legal troubles. On the edge of emotional abyss, she was able to redirect her destiny. After years of suffering, she was able to divorce Trainor. Linda also left show business, married cable installer Larry Marchiano, and started a family with him. But she remembered the years of torment she had endured. In 1980, she published Ordeal, an autobiography in which she starkly describes the abuses she suffered at the hands of Trainor and other men. At the same time, she led movements against adult cinema and received support from feminist groups. Most importantly, she went back to using the name Linda Borman. In the following years, she suffered from breast cancer, apparently due to the silicone that Trainor had injected into her. She was able to overcome that and other illnesses until she died on April 22nd of 2002, as in her youth she had been the victim of a car accident. More than 50 years after its premiere, Deep Throat retains its importance in popular culture. It still embodies the audacity of creatives eager to break molds. The curious and funny thing about its plot continues to function as a flag of freedom in times where conservatism has never ceased to prevail. Its behind the scenes hides stories of pain and struggle, and happiness was often overshadowed by fear and uncertainty. But today, those pioneers have a place of privilege in the history of adult cinema and cinema in general. Could a phenomenon of this size ever be repeated? More than anything now, in these times so careful and so politically correct. It's a rather interesting question. I want your opinions below.